Welcome to Table Talk. I'm your host, Stan Deatherage, and over here to my left is Down East Dave Hudson, joining us again as co-host. Thank you for being here, my good friend and colleague.
It's good to be back.
It's been a while. We haven't done this in a while.
Not in a while.
No, I missed you.
It's been a busy first part of the year.
It has been, and I've been busy as well. We've had a lot of stuff happening locally. We had a primary election, and we have a lot of politics in Beaufort County, but we're not going to talk about any of that today. We're going to talk about what's going on at the national level. We're going to talk about the state of the union and how do we all survive it. Well, we're doing pretty good so far, I think. Don't you, Dave?
I think so. I think we're off to a good start this year. I think we were off to a good start last year, too. I think we're just building off of it.
I do, too. Yeah. I heard a minister went to church at a different church, Episcopal church. And it's Christmas Eve. It's the only place I knew that I could go to a Christmas Eve service. I like to do that every year. And the minister said, 2025 was a really hard year. And I thought it was a good year.
I thought it was too.
On a lot of levels, and 2026 has started off pretty well.
I think so.
And I hope we keep it going. What do you see is our biggest issue in America today in foreign policy? Besides the obvious.
Yeah, the obvious, and I was always kind of questionable with foreign policy and how we would work, and I was even fairly skeptical of Donald Trump in his first term. He to me, he just did not seem to have the poise, the polish, what you needed to have to work with foreign leaders. He didn't have the diplomacy, I think, is the key piece of it. He had the boardroom mentality, not the diplomacy. And so I was a little concerned with him coming back. How's that going to affect everything? And I think he learned a lot from the 4 years that he was out of office before he was reelected. I think that he brought in a lot of really good advisors and cabinet members that are helping him. But he's certainly making, in my opinion, much better foreign policy decisions and working with folks. We hear a lot of issues, whether it's tariffs, how that ties to the economy, some of the military actions that we've seen taking place in Venezuela, what's going on in Iran right now, how are we interacting with our allied partners, whether that's in Europe with NATO, how are we looking at Ukraine and the war with Russia, how we look at China. So there's a whole lot of different things that are taking place right now tied to foreign policy. We have economic ties there. We have national defense issues that come up, but it all is pretty much tied together. And I think that what's going on right now is setting the stage to make not only our country safer, but to make the world a better place here, if it continues to go in the direction that's been going here for the past, I'd say, 15 months or so.
We had talked this morning. We do some other work besides doing our podcast, and we were out doing that piece of work, and we talked a little bit, and we both concluded that what's going on in Iran is changing the whole complexion of what's happening in our hemisphere, the Middle East, Europe. Balance of power is shifting, and it's shifting dramatically.
It really is. It's the spheres of influence are changing, and when we go back and we look at things historically, is post 1945, end of the Second World War, we really get into the Cold War and the two different ideas on how to operate, whether it was the Soviet model, whether it was democracy in the United States, and how the rest of the world was going to be included in that. Of course, we did a lot of things where we tried to contain the policy of containment and communism and working in that. And those spheres of influence evolved. You had the Warsaw Pact under the Soviet influence. They certainly had a big influence on China, North Korea, even in the Middle East, Iran, Syria, and where we had traditionally the Monroe Doctrine. Western Hemisphere really belonged to the U.S., and then we had our allies in Western Europe, and then we had some of our own allies in the Middle East as well. Africa wasn't as big on the stage back then, but people dabbled there. What we're seeing now of course, Putin believes the fall of the Soviet Union was the worst thing that could ever happen in history almost, and so he's looking to rebuild that sphere of influence, rebuild that Russian Empire, that whether you want to call it the Soviet Union, whatever it was, he's looking to do that, and we've seen him do that in Chechnya and Georgia, and going into the Crimea, now going into Ukraine. That's what he's looking to do. Very similar to what Hitler did in the 30s and beginning of World War II.
Can I interject one thing? I like your reference of using the World War II because things now are very similar to World War II. I think we've been on the doorstep of World War III for quite some time. And I think that's why it's very important we're doing what we're doing in Iran right now, because we may be forestalling World War III and it may never happen. World War III, a lot of us think, is going to be a devastating war. It will kill more civilians than ever. I think over 100,000 civilians died in World War II.
Millions.
Oh, excuse me, millions. 100 million.
Yes.
Thousands, sorry. 100 million civilians died.
Correct, yes.
Now, we're talking billions possibly dying in the next war if we're not careful, either by nuclear war, bio, all the other ways to kill people.
Right.
And I think if you juxtapose our incursion in Iran compared to Russia's incursion in Ukraine, it's dramatically different.
Two different fields of thought there, and don't really want to harp on Ukraine as much, but you can certainly see you can just see how fake it is when you say I'm going to invade a country that's ruled by Nazis to keep my country safe. That makes no sense.
Yeah.
Zelensky's Jewish, for one.
Propaganda.
It's all propaganda.
Every Russian war is going to be built on propaganda.
He has to sell it to the Russian people. But going into Ukraine, again, if he gets Ukraine, what does he do next? Does he go into the Baltics or go into Western Europe? That's the question. And it takes, fortunately, the Ukrainians have stood up. It takes standing up to that to say, here's where the line stops. And they're doing a great job of that. The other part to that is Russia has always had regime change when they had a failing war. When we look at the end of World War I, it was a disaster for Russian forces. They came out of World War I a year prior to the German collapse in France. The German strategy was always knock Russia out first, and then all we have to do is focus on the West. Mm-hmm. They knocked Russia out. You have the Communist Revolution, and now we have the Soviet Union. Go to another bad war, Afghanistan. Didn't go well for the Russians. A lot of things were going wrong. Communism was really showing it didn't work, and then you have the fall of the Soviet Union in the 90s. Well, now Putin's in a very bad war that he's not winning, that he thought he could win easily. Even I think a lot of the world thought he could easily win, and he has to win.
And he has to win. And they are a little bit ahead. They're making gains in ground, but they're losing more people.
That's right.
And again, it's been 4 years, and they should have won this very quickly.
They should. And that just goes back to showing the deficiencies that we see and have always seen in Russian military thought and their ability to operate. It's not at the level that you see in Western militaries. And what's going to really essentially could put the nail in Putin's coffin is he's getting to the point where he's really running into manpower issues. The economy's not doing well. There's starting to be cracks among commentators in Russia talking disparagingly about him, which we hadn't seen before. And
they're
so
still alive.
Some of them are still alive. And so that's just been fairly recent, but it really looks like you could see potentially regime change happen in Russia before we see a resolution to the war, depending on how things play out on a diplomatic standpoint and things like that. What he couldn't have done any worse or planned any worse was part of the other emphasis around why he wanted to go to war was to keep Russia further away from, keep NATO further away from Russia's doorstep. Well, now what he's done is Finland is a NATO member right on Russia's border. Ukraine wants NATO membership. Of course, that's a red line for Putin. The EU is very scared of that.
The EU's frightened of everything. They're frightened of their own shadow.
Right. So there's issues there, but we could possibly see regime change as a result of this war, whether it's before it
That is
concludes
a new
or
wrinkle
afterwards.
right there.
And
I haven't
that's
heard that wrinkle in the whole philosophy of what's going on right now. And I think you're seeing far, far ahead.
I think that's if the war continues at the rate that it's going, it's not sustainable for another 2 to 4 to 6 years. Not for Russia's economy,
Yeah.
not for the manpower base, not for even to keep up the facade of this is just a military operation and it's not a major deal. That's the hurdle. That's what beats Putin. Is it forces his people to turn on him.
Well, we have Iran was helping Russia,
Correct,
as an ally in their war against the Ukraine people, but now they've lost Iran's help, but they're making more money on their oil.
That's right. So that's kind of a double-edged sword.
Yeah,
and
they're getting help, but getting hurt.
Since the fall of
what we're doing,
right? Since the fall of the Shah and when the Islamic State came to power with the Ayatollahs, Iran was essentially an ally of Russia or the Soviet Union at that point in time, and then they had other proxies in the area that worked with them. Syria was a big ally of the Russians. In a lot of the Middle Eastern countries, they'll buy stuff from Russia. They'll buy stuff from the United States. They were kind of, what can we get for the best dollar to build a military and put that together. But Russia really had its sphere of influence in the Middle East. We as the United States had our own sphere of influence. What's happened as a result of the war on terror is Iran really became the big guy on the block in the Middle East.
Yeah.
That was an unintended consequence of the war on terror and the amount of time that we spent in Iraq. Syria, under Assad, with that civil war and with ISIS and all the stuff that took place, we had Russian folks fighting in Syria. We had U.S. folks fighting in Syria, all fighting against the Islamic State. The Russians were trying to prop up Assad. We were trying to get rid of the Islamic State, but it was the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Well, Syria fell. Russia kind of loses a lot of influence there. That's also one of the only warm water ports year round that they had was in Syria. So that was strategically important for them. That's kind of off the block now. With Iran, that was a key area. Iran gets most of their weapons from Russia. Iran was supplying the Shahed drones to Russia to help in the Ukraine war. But what we haven't seen is Russia return the favor now that Iran's been attacked. So, which is a good thing.
Which means Russia may not be able to return the favor.
I think that's part of it. They can't maintain the industrial base to support Iran and carry their other people. So they'll give word. They'll speak against the war. They'll talk about, well, we support you, but you're not going to see material support. You're not going to see troops in Iran from Russia. I don't anticipate. China's kind of the same way. China may sell some weapons to Iran. They'll speak out against the war, but it's a different type of influence because China and Iran's relationship wasn't always as close as the Russian Iranian relationship. And the key piece to this, and what could really be game changing, is if you see say at the end of this war, Iran has regime change. You see a more Western type of government put in place. And when I say Western form of government, you see a government that is more closely tied to the West than to Russia. That changes the entire strategic outlook for the Middle East because most of the rest of the Middle East is fairly friendly, pro-Western right now to the United States.
First time in my lifetime. I mean, it's at the end of Donald Trump's first term, we had the Abraham Accords.
Right.
And of course, as soon as the vegetable president was elected, first thing he tried to do is destroy the Abraham Accords. Right. It never existed. That has been carried forward now that he's become president again, and we are friends with these people. I mean, Biden didn't strike much of an image when he visited over there, and they like Donald. For whatever reason, Donald Trump does well on the world stage. He wasn't supposed to. The Democratic Socialists said he would be terrible. We would lose all our allies. We may have lost a little bit out of Europe, but Europe, when we had Biden as president, didn't respect us.
That's right, and I think that's the key thing that we're seeing is if we can get almost a united Middle East, really no major players now. You take Syria, Libya, Iraq, Iran, all of the traditional state sponsors of terror, all of the folks that we traditionally had on the bad list, and if we're getting along, that does a lot of things. It removes them from the Russian sphere of influence. It should ideally remove them from as much of the Chinese sphere of influence. But what that also provides to us is the ability to draw down U.S. troop presence in the Middle East that we've been over there since 1990, full time. That really allows us to pivot to what really are considered more threats to national security, whether it be the current Russian regime and the threats that they make to NATO and Western Europe, or if it's the threat that China could potentially pose in any kind of Taiwan scenario or other war. China really seems to not have any territorial ambitions above and beyond Taiwan. That's in parts of the Western Pacific, which is a good thing. But they still have global reach in what they're looking for, and it's not outright colonization, but it's economic colonization.
Yeah.
And so trying to limit that, I think the outcome of Iran will send pictures to both Beijing and Moscow that the United States is still here. We are the superpower in the world. And one, we expect people to be treated right. We expect to have decency in government. When we're looking at Iran calling for the overthrow of their government, the people need to rise up. They need to overthrow that government. That needs to come from them. That's not something that we do for them. That's something they have to do themselves, and then establish what works for them. And if it can work together with all of us, where we can help, we can become allies, we can have closer economic ties, that's just a better thing all the way around. It also shows that we're willing to stand up when we draw a red line, which Obama failed to do in Syria. They failed to do it with Iran, with the nuclear weapons. If we say, here's the red line and we're not going to let you cross it, and if you do, there's repercussions, I think that shows strength, and that's what is respected by North Korea, China, Russia. They understand strength. If we go in and we snatch Maduro out of his bed, basically, if we go into Iran
and go and slay so many tens of, maybe even 100 of their special forces they had over there
Cubans.
from Cuba.
Yes.
Yeah. Slayed them.
I think that shows that when we tell you that there are red lines, we actually mean that, and then that increases our deterrence, which that kind of fell by the wayside at times. And I've talked about it before with the war on terror. Kind of what led us there is the American deterrent was not necessarily there. We'll fire cruise missiles at abandoned training camps, or if you kill a few soldiers, we'll pull out completely. The United States didn't have the stomach for a conflict. Now that remains to be seen what happens here in Iran. We certainly had a very long conflict during the war on terror, but we weren't looking at the casualties as large as they were, and the injuries, which a lot of people always forget about. It's you have infinitely more wounded that you have to care for after the fact than just killed in action. But that's something that, if you look at a bad month or a good month in Ukraine, their numbers are skyrocketing above what we were seeing over 15 years in Iraq and Afghanistan. So,
remarkable.
So
they've lost more in that war, both countries.
Yes.
Than we did in Vietnam, Korea, and all the other wars since then.
I think that they have lost more in the 4 years than we've lost in all our wars combined.
Really? Both sides?
Yes.
And does that include Civil War as well?
Civil War as well.
Wow.
And up until, if I remember correctly, up until the tail end of the War on Terror, the Civil War, there were more American fatalities in the Civil War alone than in all of our other wars combined. But when you look at total casualties, Russia alone has probably sustained more casualties in the war in Ukraine than we have in all of our history.
And let's talk about that for a minute. America's very good at executing wars, managing wars, and not losing as many of our young men and now women in battle. And we see other countries not doing quite as well. This war that we're fighting in Iran right now, let's go ahead and call it a war. When you call it a war instead of a conflict,
it's a war.
They've done a lot of damage to Iran. They've taken it down to where they can't even fight anymore, hardly. But I heard today they're only estimating 1,900 Iranians killed. I don't think that's the whole reason behind what we're doing to see how many Iranians were killed. We're just trying to take out their ability to wage war and be a negative influence in that region of the world.
Correct.
And they are the the world's greatest state sponsor of terrorism.
They are, and they really that was part of their strategy, part of what they've worked on. We saw it all through the war on terror. They not only sponsored or helped, assisted those insurgents, terrorists, whatever you want to call them, in Iraq and in Afghanistan, but with their proxies that they've used in Lebanon and the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas, all of that was built as really kind of you can't really call it a fifth column, but that was certainly an asymmetrical part of their doctrine, that in the event of conflict, we have these proxy groups that can hurt you further away from us, and we'll let them fight for us, and then we will do whatever we need to do to defend ourselves. The Iranians, for whatever reason, and it's part of, I think, where we've seen the real issue that started the war, they're obviously pursuing nuclear weapons. They want a nuclear weapon regardless of what.
Missiles.
And ballistic missiles. But the Iranians have used ballistic missiles. That's their weapon of choice.
Yeah.
If you look at their military, their aircraft are outdated. Their tanks are outdated. It's really kind of a third-rate military. They put their emphasis into drones and ballistic missiles. If they were going to do something, they were going to shoot a missile at you. And if that didn't work, they used the proxy forces. So by taking out the missile forces, ballistic, cruise missile, whatever they are, and the drones, that really limits their ability to wage war. Taking out the proxies is another piece. And that was a brilliant thing that the Israelis were able to do over the past few years, is they dismantled the proxies that Iran was using. So now Iran has to fight with its conventional forces, and it can't do that successfully. So
the October 7th War, for lack of a better name, this is like a continuation of that, wouldn't you say?
I would say so, yes. And
we really don't have a name for this yet.
No, I don't know what they'll end up calling this. It might go down similar to what I call the first Gulf War, which that was Desert Storm. Operation Desert Shield became Desert Storm. I've always kind of referred to it as the first Gulf War after we went into Iraq the second time. That was kind of covered under the blanket of the global war on terror, which was really Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan and Operation Iraqi Freedom in Iraq. We were fighting two separate theaters, all within the CENTCOM area of responsibility. But what do you call that? A lot of people say it was a global war on terror. Some people just call it the Iraq War. I don't think I've heard it called the Afghanistan War. It's always just been we were in Afghanistan. So I don't know that history has really decided what we're going to call these. This, I would say, is the Iranian War. And
you started off that way.
That's pretty much what started off. We'll see.
We'll see what the Israelis say about that, because it really started with them using their proxies to kill, 1,200, slaughtered 1,200 Jews.
Yes.
In one day.
Yes.
One day, most of them civilians.
And that was all part of it. It was the Islamic State's stated policy: death to Israel, death to America.
Yeah.
And that was
they wanted us dead.
That's what they want.
And that plus a nuclear weapon is not a good combination.
Not a good combination, especially when you allow it to proliferate. Which I have no doubts that they get the technology, they will allow it to proliferaate.
Why do you think the Obama administration and then the Biden administration wanted Iran as an ally?
I mean, I'd like to have
paid them a lot of money. Yeah. You remember how Biden gave $5 billion to get 5 hostages back?
It's all misguided.
And Trump's been getting these hostages back just with the fear of, please don't bomb us. Please don't kill us. We'll let them go. I don't understand how you can have one president do things that way, and then Biden was willing to give up so much.
It's a I don't really know how to call it, and I can't say it's a blanket statement that it's a kind of a Democrat form of thinking, but there's definitely
to use money to get things, use
money, give things away, negotiate with people
with taxpayer money,
with the idea that they have Western values and they'll agree with that, or they'll respect that.
We'll buy their respect.
Correct. And
I'd rather just put more money in the defense of our nation and the War Department.
You have to have that, and there's lots of quotes out there about, Ronald Reagan had a great quote where he talks about, freedom is never free. It's only protected, one generation and handed down one generation at a time. I forget the exact quote. The the price of peace is eternal vigilance. I think that's just a very rough, analogy, but I think even going back to Thomas Jefferson, that's been the mindset is, unfortunately, you have to be prepared for war in order to deter war. And that's where, at least with Biden, with Obama, it didn't really work. When we're willing to give you back known terrorists to bring a deserter back, I have a lot of problems with that.
Yeah.
But we didn't need to get him back. He could have stayed there for all I care.
Fine.
He shouldn't have been an American at that point.
That was Iraq. What's that guy's name?
He was in Afghanistan. Yeah,
sorry.
And I can't stand the guy enough that I've forgotten his name. I had some terrible name for him that I can't remember, so I can't even remember his real name at this point in time.
We lost a number of soldiers looking for him.
Looking for him. And, if you're willing to collude with the enemy, there's no place in America for you. But if we're going to give people back to you to get him back, so be it. If you're going to, let American warship be boarded by Iranians and have American sailors held hostage, that's an issue. President shouldn't be doing that. You're the commander in chief.
Why would our ally in Iran, our ally during the Obama administration, be allowed to do that?
You shouldn't be allowed to do it, period. It's called sovereignty, and it's making them do what, we should try to get along. War is never the answer, but Clausewitz, if I remember correct, said it. It is, war is an extension of politics by other means.
I like the comment that Department of War Chief Pete Hegseth said about the Iranian Navy. I think a reporter asked him, "Are you willing to share the Persian Gulf with Iran?" He said, "We're doing it now. They get the bottom half."
Yeah, and that's right. And it's really built upon what are you trying to achieve? What was your end state? What is your accomplishment? And I think that's what the current Iranian regime, because we keep killing so many of them, it's kind of hard to keep track of.
Yeah, they're killing the right people.
Who's in charge?
I think they're doing this so that so many Iranians will not be affected by this war, and they will peacefully rebuild their nation into a great nation of good people, which Iran has been for a long, long time.
Going back to biblical times.
Yes.
Iran.
They were badasses.
Yeah.
They were along with the Romans and the Greeks, were the badasses of that time.
They were.
And the Egyptians too.
Right. And you had Iran, known then as Persia.
And Carthage before that.
And they were the big player in the Middle East. Persia, it had its own empire, and they were there. Under the Ayatollah and the Islamic State, that has been part of their great hope was eventually we reestablish that Persian Empire. They really are, if they had the ability to, or the Iran-Iraq War kind of put a stop to that back in the 80s because they just fought each other to a standstill. But Iran would be more than happy to in most of the Middle East if they could take over it. They just can't do it. Of course, you have the different, where religion comes into play too, the Sunni-Shia divide. And that's why Saudi Arabia and Iran are on two different sides of the coin. Will they ever get along? Maybe, maybe not. If Iran loses this war and becomes a little bit more friendly with the West, we can probably find a way to make them all get along or come as close as we're going to over there with that. But what's in it for Iran to win this war? What are they really looking to do? Well, they don't want to give up the missiles because they see the missiles as how they defend themselves. Well, it's not working. What people haven't paid attention to is Iran has used their ballistic missiles against their own people or against Turkey or the Kurds. Whenever they don't like something, they shoot a ballistic missile at you on the home territory or not. It'd be like if Donald Trump decided, hey, we don't really like the way they're doing stuff down in New Mexico today. Let's shoot a missile over at them and maybe they'll get in line.
Yeah. We didn't even do it with Mexico.
No. I mean, it makes no sense. But so that's one of their issues. They want the missiles. They want the ability to continue on their nuclear program, theoretically for peaceful reasons, to generate energy. When you're sitting on top of all that oil, Don't see why you need nuclear
I
capabilities.
don't mind them having nuclear capabilities, providing they don't create bombs.
It's the ability to
They're not
enrich
able
it.
to handle it.
And
Certain nations will not ever be able to handle the nuclear weapons.
that's right.
I wish we didn't have them.
Well, there's a lot of
we're
countries.
we're going to have them as long as they're out there.
The unfortunate with the proliferation, India, Pakistan, that's a major issue. If you're ever going to see a nuclear war flash off quick, look to India and Pakistan.
Yeah.
That's where I anticipate if we're going to see a nuclear exchange in the next 100 years, the first one will be India and Pakistan. Chinese, of course, have them now. The North Koreans want them. They may even have some. Who knows? But the Iranians want it. And a lot of that goes back, you have to look at it historically as well. They see the nuclear weapon as their deterrent piece. They don't need to have as many as we do. They just need to have 2 or 3 that they can use.
Yeah, but they see it as a way to keep their regime in place.
That's how it is.
Whereas we have elections in this nation. They don't have elections. They have fake elections.
Right.
And we have, mostly we have real elections. We've had a few bad ones lately, that's for sure.
It is.
2020 comes to mind.
It does. It's,
we'll talk about that another day. Fulton County.
and it goes back to trying to understand the way different things evolved. We burnt Japan to the ground at the end of World War II, and then we dropped 2 nuclear weapons on them. But we went back in and rebuilt the country. It's a key ally.
Yeah.
We destroyed Germany, and we didn't firebomb all of Germany, but we did firebomb them toward the end. But
Dresden
we did destroy it,
and Berlin,
and so they were destroyed.
Berlin's almost new, isn't it?
Most of it is all new,
and Dresden's all new.
And under the Marshall Plan, we rebuilt Europe, and specifically Germany, and we kept military presence in both countries, and we supported them and protected them. We provided that umbrella of protection to them, again, against the Soviets at that point in time.
To be fair, though, Germany, didn't the British do most of the firebombing?
The Brits did the firebombing for the most part. We dabbled in that toward the end, but Japan was our that was
Tokyo.
Yeah, it was.
And they killed 200,000 in one night.
Right.
Which is like almost it's more.
It was more. The firebombing
Nagasaki
killed more.
and Hiroshima.
Correct. Toward the end of the war, Curtis LeMay, who was responsible for the strategic bombing, the B-29s flying out of the Marianas, he was keeping track of all the cities we were firebombing, because in order to destroy Japanese industry, it was a cottage industry. It was dispersed, so you just burn the whole place down. That was strategically easier than trying to do strategic bombing at that point in time. Toward the end of the war, I think it was Truman, I think Roosevelt had already passed away, but I could be wrong. They called as part of the idea in the deciding, do we drop a nuclear weapon or not?
It was Truman.
And they said, how long do you think it'll take to conclude this war? And LeMay said, give me a minute or two. And he walked over to his map and he looked at how many cities hadn't been firebombed yet and did the calculus and said, well, it's going to take me about X number of weeks. And
then we got to send the troops
there'll be nothing left. And they said, well, we'll drop 1 or 2.
My father was stationed in the Philippines, and he was stationed there after Okinawa because they were going to go in.
That's right. They were going to go in.
They were going to go in.
And I think it was it was slated to be November, I think, of 45 was going to be the big.
And my father did go in after September of 45 to destroy weapons.
Right.
Destroyed a whole bunch of weapons. That was his detail. So, and that's why I have a Japanese rifle and a samurai sword.
Right.
He brought some of it on.
Yeah, back when you still could do that.
Yeah.
But that was kind of a different picture than what we see if you fast forward to the end of the Korean War. Mm-hmm. We essentially did the same thing to North Korea that we did to Japan. We just burned it to the ground. And that's why the Koreans are so intent on getting a nuclear weapon. Mm-hmm. They understand firsthand what it's like to get bombed into the Stone Age, essentially, and they still haven't recovered. But the idea is, if we have a nuclear weapon, are you willing to come and mess with us if I can put 1 nuclear weapon on Los Angeles? That changes calculus of how much we're willing to do or not do in that area. Iran's kind of the same picture. How far are you willing to go to mess with us if we can retaliate? Now, we don't have to have mutually assured destruction like we do with the Russians, but you just take out 1 city in the U.S. how does that change the calculus on what the United States chooses to do?
To our viewers, we have a free form dialogue here. None of this is planned out. So I'm going to make a little change. You're talking about a nuclear weapon on Los Angeles. Let's talk about the Monroe Doctrine, not the Monroe Doctrine, which was in the 1820s under James Monroe, our sixth president of the United States. The Monroe Doctrine, which I think we're talking about our own Golden Dome. Of course, if Trump's going to name it, I'm surprised he didn't call it the Trump Dome.
Right.
He's got programs to do that somewhere else.
Oh, yeah. I think that's an athletic complex he's going to build.
But the Golden Dome, since he loves gold.
Right. I think there's a lot of credibility there. I think he has looked at what the Israelis have done with their air defense system.
Their Iron Dome.
Right, yes.
Yeah, Iron Dome, excuse me.
And so I think it goes back to, we've dabbled in this for years, going back to even Ronald Reagan with Star Wars. Mm-hmm. And how do we defend the United States best against those threats? Right now, ICBMs. Of course, now we're starting to look at hypersonic missiles, potentially space-based weapon systems. So the threat continues to emerge. How best do we defend against that? And so we have the anti-ballistic missile systems that we use that are naval-based or ground-based for those intercontinental ballistic missiles. That's a piece of that. But you have to have more. Fortunately, because we're covered by two different oceans, it gives us a nice barrier from some of the things that we see with the shorter range missiles, with the rockets, things like that you see in Israel. But the concept is valid, and that's what you do as that next level of deterrent, especially for near peer competitors, the Chinese, the Russians. That Golden Dome tells Russia, you may have nuclear weapons, we may have nuclear weapons. Can you get one through?
Yeah.
And the Star Wars threat, however much of that we built or did not build,
mostly didn't. It was a threat.
We said we were doing it. Well, Russia has to keep up, and they were spending so much of their GDP on military, they bankrupted themselves and collapsed. And so that the threat of something like that was enough.
This is going to be real, though.
This will be real.
The Space Force that Donald Trump initiated back in his first term is going to be a big help.
That and when we think of Space Force too, it's not just outer space; it's cyberspace.
Yes,
and that's really where the biggest threats, I would say, come into play now. It's not your conventional threat; it's the cyber attacks. If I can hack into a system and take down the U.S. grid, if I can take down your water treatment facilities, if I can do any of that domestically, I haven't killed a single person, may not have even fired a shot, but I can cause enough domestic turmoil or civilian deaths due to unrest here that I can be victorious on anything else I want to do.
So all these big plans, the Golden Dome, the Monroe Doctrine, we're going to get some other issues, but it puts us in a very vulnerable spot as Americans. We really are. Department of Homeland Security is kind of important right now, isn't it? I mean, why do the Democrats feel like they want to shut it down? Is it because they want to make sure that we don't enforce immigration laws in this nation?
I think that's a key piece of it.
That's a key piece of it. Letting the 15 million or more in. And then once the president gets elected, and he made it a big issue, got elected, and he said, we're going to enforce laws, and they don't want to do that.
Right.
So that's why maybe up in Minneapolis where 2 people died, I'm sorry they died, but you don't take a loaded gun to a street fight, and you don't run over people with your car. And a lot was going on before that. Bricks being thrown at vehicles and being hit by other cars, jamming them in.
Right.
That was to stop enforcement of our laws.
Laws, correct.
And these are federal laws. And we have a supremacy clause in the Constitution of the United States. In other words, none of these DAs are going to be able to arrest DHS personnel, are they?
No.
Why do they keep telling their people they're going to do that?
I think it's really it's a political issue. Is more for control of power within the U.S. government is ultimately what the immigration question comes down to.
But isn't that part of our Don Road doctrine to have secure borders?
It is, and
secure skies, a dome,
right. That's
protect our people, which is the most important thing a federal government can do is to protect us.
That's right. That's right.
That's their number one charge, is it? Am I right?
That's the number one charge.
I mean,
provide for the common defense.
Yeah, the states take care of everything else. We take care of commerce with other countries, and we allow the states to have interstate commerce, and we have laws governing that. We protect our documents,
Right.
and we have the Supreme Court so that we can keep our Constitution in check, and we have Congress, and Congress's number one job is to protect the American people.
That's right.
Everything else is just fluff, right?
That's pretty much what it should be.
Yeah, I mean that's the way it was intended.
That's the intent.
That was the beginning intent of the Constitution of the United States and the Declaration and the Bill of Rights that came soon afterwards.
Correct.
The amendments. So I don't know.
It goes back to and it kind of gets off the topic to some extent, but the idea of you're going to impede the ability to secure the homeland, there has to be some nefarious reason for that. Whether you're trying to push things towards socialism, whether you're just, for whatever reason, you're trying to have control over what happens.
Control the elections.
Yeah, control elections, control the government, force you to wear a mask or take a shot. Whatever that is, there's got to be a reason there. We've talked about it before with immigration, is if you could bring enough other voters in to create a new victim class and then give blanket citizenship and promise something, whether you're going to deliver or not, you get a bunch of votes.
Yeah, and some of those votes may be illegal votes, right?
Well, they'd all be illegal, but if you've now given blanket immunity and citizenship to all of the
Montgomery
the
County, Maryland, allows illegals to vote.
Yeah, it's.
I mean, and you can do that maybe through states. The Save America Act is trying to end that, but states really are in charge of their elections through their general assemblies,
And that's how it should be.
And I agree. And what has happened, and we're finding this out, a lot of people are leaving those states.
That's right.
That don't believe in citizenship and don't really believe in crime. They support crime.
It's an un-American idea to give. Well, I can't say it's an un-American idea. My opinion is, if you're an American citizen, you are protected under the Constitution and the laws of the United States. If you're not an American citizen, you're not protected by any of those by default because you're not an American citizen. The idea that you're going to give the same rights to non-Americans is a nice idea.
They still get due process.
But they get due process, but if you want to be an American, I'm all for bringing in immigration. I'm all for let people come in. Legal immigration. If you want to come here, you want to work. That's what our country was built on.
I believe in lenient immigration.
Absolutely.
And people you need to bring in to do the crops, they have to leave their families at home. Then we don't have to educate them and have them on welfare. They just come to work, and when they finish working, they go back. They take all their money with them.
That's it. I really wish you could bring in the people who are willing to work and export American citizens who don't work.
I mean but you can't.
You can't.
But it's not. It's a good trade.
But it's not that we don't need more Americans.
No, we don't.
We just need Americans.
We need Americans who want to be productive.
And how you do that. But it goes back to how we look at how this all works. People are leaving, and when we talk illegal immigration, it's mostly South America, Central America, and they're coming here. But we have to look at why are they coming here. You have to look at the type of government that they have, the narco-terrorism that takes place there.
They're being enticed to come here.
They're being enticed to come. The Chinese are pushing a lot of folks up through that area because the Chinese want to get in here too. They want to infiltrate, do whatever they can here. And when you have an open border to come through, that's an easy way to get agents and folks here.
Do you remember that when Obama was president, they were amassing south of the border before Trump came in and was elected? But once he was elected, and you have that 2-month span of time before he actually takes office, man, they were coming in.
Right.
And they were letting them come in. They didn't stop him at that point, did they?
No.
And they carried that forth with Biden. He just said, we're going to tell the American people we have a secure border, and then we're not going to secure the border anywhere. We're just going to process them. And they processed probably 10 million people under as though they were refugees.
Right.
Oh, what's it called again?
Political asylum, depending on what
Political
it was.
asylum. Yeah, political asylum.
So it's
And you're supposed to apply it to the next country.
right.
Not come all the way through all these other countries to get here.
That's
asylum. Right. I just couldn't come up with that word.
So
Political asylum.
That is our, I would say, that the immigrants themselves aren't necessarily a threat. You have to look at them individually. You could be
the numbers are a threat.
Yeah, the numbers are a threat, and the reason that they're coming in and why we let them in without going through the traditional immigration process.
We spent over
that's the question.
$100 billion a year to process them and give them a place to stay, feed them, give them telephones.
And what people don't forget is
that's at the national level.
Right.
It's not talking about the local level where you have to educate them, and we have to by the Supreme Court has dictated that we have to educate everybody that's in this nation.
And that's what people forget is all of the money that's being spent on non-U.S. citizens is money that you're paying out of your taxpayer wallet that's going to services or goods that you're not receiving.
Oh,
so
yeah.
you're losing two different ways.
You're talking about a $39 trillion deficit. Mm-hmm. If we had a strict enforcement of immigration over the years, it would only be half of that right now.
Right.
And then you get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse, which, of course, illegal immigration is waste, fraud, and abuse at its highest level. But if you get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse, and there's a lot of fraud out there. We're finding out in these blue states. And there may be in some of these red states, too, but we'll find all that out at some point. I think J.D. Vance is handling that.
Yeah.
That's part of the Donroe Doctrine, I guess. But you could probably get rid of all of the deficit. But speaking of the Donroe Doctrine, we've got a lot going on. We got Venezuela is now almost a protectorate of the United States. And Cuba is having problems now because they're not getting oil from Iran, right?
Yeah.
And they're not getting any money from Russia.
Right. And that goes back to, Cuba's been an issue throughout the whole Cold War, going back, prior to the 60s. Venezuela's been a little bit different. They've really not been pro-American or pro-United States for a number of years. Hugo Chavez, he was really a big, antagonist toward the United States. Maduro certainly picked up and continued in that realm. Venezuela was building close ties with Russia, and Russia was seeing that as, hey, we can come in, and what they wanted to do was have a forward staging base to bring warships into the Western Hemisphere. Most of their ships couldn't make it across the ocean, but the issue there is by getting rid of Maduro and really having more of a hand in democratizing Venezuela, making it a legitimate form of government, getting rid of the narco-terrorists, that does a number of different things.
A lot of great things.
The war on drugs that started under Reagan, I always thought should have been kinetic. Meaning we should be dropping warheads on foreheads, and that
you're saying a real war on drugs.
A real war on drugs,
okay.
and
kind of like now.
And that's what Trump's doing. And eventually, I don't know how much cocaine's going to be worth to me if I have to watch above my head all the time, worrying about something's going to come get me.
Yeah.
You kill enough of them, somebody decides that trade's not worth getting into anymore. So I think by focusing on getting rid of the narcotics and the drug trade in South America
and other various evils
down there, that makes that area safer and more secure. It gives their residents a reason to stay there. So that ties back to the immigration piece.
I'd like to interject one thing. I have a friend who's from Venezuela. He's been in America for a long time, and he speaks very good English, and smart guy. He's an engineer, and but he doesn't like Donald Trump for some reason. And we were talking about what happened after Maduro was spirited away at the dead of night. And I said, "But you don't like Trump?" And he said, "Is that what he did in Venezuela good?" And he said, "Yeah, that was a good thing. That was a very, very, very good thing." And so you like him a little better now? Well, maybe so, a little better. And my sister's still in Venezuela, and I said, "How's she feel about Trump?" "Oh, she loves Trump. she loves Trump." You didn't vote for Trump? "No, I did not vote for him because I just don't like him." I said, "Would your sister vote for him if she lived up here?" "Oh, yeah, she would vote for him." So he's doing very well in some of these countries that he's taking all these bad people out.
And I think that's a key piece of it. Is it goes back to spheres of influence.
Yeah.
If you make it safer there, you decrease the crime. That gives you the ability to go in and do economic development.
Yes.
If I have to worry about going down to the South America, but I have to have bodyguards because there's kidnappings and there's ransoms and there's murders and there's gang violence, drug violence, whatever you want to call it. Nobody really wants to invest there. That's why we had so much trouble in Afghanistan. If we could have brought in an outside investment and really, built up something other than the poppy trade, you might have had something going. But it was too dangerous. Nobody really wanted to invest there. So if you clean up the drug issues, that can solve a lot of issues or help to solve some of those by really eliminating that pro-Russian influence down there. You push that back out of the Western Hemisphere, and then that kind of rolls over to Cuba. Cuba's still in 1950s mode. The cars hardly work. The economy is in shambles. Communism doesn't work. If Cuba were to have a change in their regime or in their government, and really just kind of cut ties with Russia, but even more so really just become more democratic, I think you could see Cuba transform overnight into being a pretty popular spot and a key contributor here in the Western Hemisphere. It is.
It's volcanic. It's got mountains. It's got shoreline.
It's got a lot going for it. It's got a lot going for it. It just doesn't. It's not run well, and it shows what happens when bad government runs things. Same as Iran. Same as Russia. Bad government begets bad qualities of life.
Well, in America, we don't need communist government. No. We don't need big government. The bigger the government, the worse we live. We give up our freedoms and we give up our money.
That's right.
Why? For more fraud.
And then you see how far it gets you.
Yeah. Let me. I want to talk about the geography of the world. The only planet we firmly know where life exists. If you look at our hemisphere, North America, South America. It is the greenest hemisphere on the planet.
Right.
We have a very desirable place to live in North America and also South America. We have, in essence, a freedom-loving people from top to bottom.
Right.
This could be the place. This is the new world.
It is.
It has not been destroyed yet. And hopefully it won't be destroyed, but this is the last remaining place for us to inhabit and live good lives. So maybe it's good the Monroe, becoming the Donroe Doctrine can exist and make the world a better place, and maybe make it a place that can be envied and also act as an example for other parts of the world to recondition their soils and take care of their oceans and do all the things that we need to do here first.
That's right, and I think that we see that here. There certainly is the big push in a lot of those areas here, whereas other countries pay lip service. People can argue that we even pay lip service to some of it, but we're certainly not as guilty in some of our whether it's emissions, whether it's pollution, whether it's there's still slavery over in East Asia. I mean, there's all kinds of bad stuff that happens all over the world. We just try to not have as much of that as possible here. And I think we do a better job of policing that. And when I say we, the Western Hemisphere in general, compared to what you see in Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. And being able to... you can't export American democracy. The whole world's not equipped to handle it. The whole world doesn't necessarily want it, but it's the idea
they need to fight for it. If they want it, they need to fight for it.
If they want it, they need to fight for it. If a king works for you, that's fine. If a parliament works, if whatever works for you to where you can be a contributing member of the national or the world, I should say. Ideally peaceful. Your military is for defense. It's not for going out and taking things from others or anything else. And that's what we see. It ties back with Iran, Russia, China. With what we're doing in Iran right now, we're trying to take off the board a regime that is openly anti-Western. That has been a state sponsor of terror. They've been very violent to their own people. So we want to give those folks a chance to provide a better government for themselves.
You just said they're anti-Muslim.
They
some
are.
factors.
They are.
I mean, can you imagine, like, you used to have, it was a really political situation, but you had in Ireland, a very small country, where you had the Catholics and the
Civil
Protestants fighting constantly. Not killing a whole lot, but it was just a state of unrest for many generations. Can you imagine that going on all over the world? In the United States, the Presbyterians start killing the Methodists.
That's the worst case scenario when you have to look at it. And most people don't really understand how bad civil war is. When we go back and look at Bosnia, when we look at Kosovo, some of those areas, even where we look at the way the Muslims have treated one another under whether it's the Ayatollah in Iran, whether it was under Hussein and the Ba'ath Party in Iraq. It really was, even Northern Ireland's a little bit different because their delineation was really Catholic versus Protestant, which
was a political thing.
Which tied back to politics. Most of your Protestants were pro UK, pro England. Most of your Catholics were traditional Irish folk.
Yes.
So it's a religious mess that ties back over hundreds of years to where did you come from? This is how we figure out who you are. And people have long memories. The United States, maybe not as much as the Chinese and some of these other places, but even in Bosnia, it was, why are you fighting? Well, his grandfather 300 years ago did something to my village, and I don't like him. Of course, there was a religious aspect to that as well. Muslims.
Bosnia is mostly Muslim, right? And Serbia is mostly Catholic, and that would Eastern Catholic,
if I remember correct. It's I think Eastern Orthodox.
Eastern Orthodox.
And see, a lot of people forget. It's a blanket statement. It's kind of overarching. Just stereotype, whatever you want to call it. But if you look at all the woes of the 20th century to today, they all tie back to Muslim extremism.
Yeah.
And that goes back to the assassination of the Archduke prior to World War I. It was a Muslim separatist assassinates the Archduke. World War I kicks off. And then World War I, all the things that happened after World War I, you wouldn't have World War II if you didn't have World War I. You wouldn't have the Soviet Union if you didn't have World War I. You wouldn't have all these other things that have played out over the past 120 years or so.
The Muslims are a little bit behind us. We had problems with Catholicism. And Protestants too, at some point. But the Catholics, they raised a war in Europe for a long, long time. And they didn't really preach the word of Christ. They acted like they did, but they really didn't.
And I forget where I had read the study. There was a study I read a number of years ago. It's probably been a decade or more ago now. But they said that a lot of the issues that we see with the Muslim extremism is because it's a newer religion than Judaism or even Christianity.
Very much.
They are still in the growing pains of their religion that we saw during the Crusades and some of the things with Christianity.
I mean, the Muslim religion really is about 700 years behind us,
right?
We Christians,
and so that's kind of an evolutionary step in their religious process of how do we really operate? And of course, you've got zealots on both sides, and we even see that in Christianity, ourselves. We saw it especially in the 90s with the abortion bombings and things like that. How far do you go based on what you believe? And it's one of those issues that,
I mean, if you really get down to the word of Christ, you don't go very far.
No, if you just think about it to the very basics, and so that's where I see opportunity with Iran. What this is allowing is it will potentially give us the ability to stabilize the Middle East, potentially see a more democratic form of government in the country if they are to rise up, overthrow the current regime. That will also give us the ability to focus on what we see as other peer competitor threats. The Russians under Putin and the Chinese. It gives us the ability to strategically pivot what we've kind of said in more in word than deeds for a while, but it allows us to really pivot and focus on those near peer competitors that we would anticipate being the next big war. If there's going to be a World War III, that's kind of where it is.
I think that's the number one issue here. We have to forestall World War III from happening in our lifetimes or ever.
And I think that's the key piece. And I think it shows resolve. If you draw a red line and you say this isn't going to happen, then if Now, of course, we're very murky on will we support Taiwan if China was to do something. That's a big question. Will we or will we not? It really is going to boil down to who the president is.
It really will.
But if China really believes, if the U.S. says this is how it's going to be, and they don't stick up to it, it's easy for us to invade. That's a no-brainer in my head.
Yeah.
If I see, okay, they said no to this, no to that, no to that, and you tiptoed in the water and you got smacked,
I mean, after the
then
disastrous,
maybe I'm not going to do it.
After the disastrous Afghanistan pull out, or I like to say retreat from Afghanistan, it was a disaster.
Oh yeah,
massive
absolutely.
disaster, probably the worst military disaster in our history.
And
it was self-inflicted.
Anybody who knew anything about that could have seen that coming.
Yeah.
And I had said it for years to people just in passing is the minute that we left Afghanistan, it would all go back to where it was.
Yeah.
It was just destined to happen.
$80 billion worth of military armament, ordnance, and rifles. Gosh. And all that happened so quickly, so thoughtlessly. And Russia said, "Okay, we're going in Ukraine, man. They're not going to do a damn thing."
That's right, and see that, and that goes back. We say to the road to war under Obama as well.
Yeah.
That's when we saw Russia go into Georgia. We saw them go into Crimea. There were no repercussions.
Oh, we gave them blankets in Ukraine.
We'll stand back. And so when you see, just like with Hitler, when you see you can take a little bit, you're going to keep taking a little bit more. And I think I've said this before. Putin certainly under KGB, very pro-Soviet type of mentality. I believe it was Lenin. It may have been Trotsky. I'm pretty sure it was Lenin. But he always said, "You probe with bayonets, and if you hit something soft, you keep going. But when you hit something hard, you stop." And that was the Russian idea of what you do. And we've consistently seen Putin do that. And it wasn't until Ukraine put a stop to it. And unfortunately, what President Trump said. And I guess Europeans have finally seen it, unfortunately, because of Ukraine, is you have to share the cost of your defense. The United States is not here to be the world's policeman, to fight all the wars, to protect everybody. If you're not contributing your fair share, we may not come help you. I mean, you've got to be involved. Americans aren't here to do that for everybody. And now you see the European nations, especially Poland, but Germany, England, a lot of the other ones, they're building up their military capabilities. They're looking at joint defense again and actually investing in it, as opposed to those social programs where they've essentially spent the past
threw up in their borders
70 years,
yeah,
essentially becoming a retirement home for socialists is essentially what it's become, because they've got an aging population. They have a decreasing birth rate in Western Europe, and they've got so much socialism in all of the domestic programs that they have. Not that there's a bad thing. There's plenty of debates on socialized healthcare and medicine and retirements and education. All of those are political arguments. But what they definitely didn't do was invest in their own security. No. And now we see the repercussions of that. So the fact that Trump has said, get back in the game, start paying for your own defense, get involved, I think that's going to be beneficial to not only Europe but for us as well as allies. That's a key piece of that. But when you take it a step further, he was, he was really kind of, I think, smart enough to understand that. And when we go back to speaking about wars themselves, right now we're fighting a war that I never would have expected 15, 20 years ago. Israel and the United States and a coalition of Middle Eastern countries fighting if not the biggest, Muslim country in the Middle East. That's a game changer from a political perspective, from a leadership perspective in the world, and who has the standing. But above and beyond that, American troops are here to defend Americans. What we went back to, this is what we do. Iran has been a threat. Iran has been responsible for more American deaths, I would argue, or they've been a contributor to that in the past 20 years, 25 years than any other country. We're putting a stop to it. It's a good thing. And if we're going to do anything else, we just need to assist them without putting American boots on the ground necessarily to overthrow that regime, because nation building we can't do. It doesn't work well. We saw it in Iraq. We saw it in Afghanistan. We saw it in Vietnam. American troops don't need to be fighting for other people for values they won't stand up for themselves. But we should support them when they do rise up.
They're going to put troops on the ground, boots on the ground.
I don't think they will in the sense that we're going to invade Iran.
No, I don't think
I think you may see some covert operations go on. We may see some key sites or something, but that would be about it. But I think I think that's the key piece is we see a coalition fighting against a terrible regime, and at some point in time, I would expect to see the Iranians rise up and
I
do
do
the same
too,
thing.
but I think we're going to see a lot of islands invaded by our troops, and Carge Island, and at the Straits of Hormuz, where they've closed it, or at least they have the thought process that it's closed, because these ships don't want to get blown apart by what they don't know is under the water. But we will see, I think, that open back up, and you'll see the free flow of oil from the Persian Gulf. Let's face it, it's not just Iran. It's UAE and
It's everybody.
yeah, everybody that has oil is shipping it through those straits, and Iran has closed those straits.
And I think that again it goes back to being a game changer. A friendly Iranian regime takes all of those threats off the board.
Takes it all away. It's been a threat for 47 years.
Whether the cards have just been planned right and executed, or they just kind of fell together haphazardly. Whatever it is, the Monroe Doctrine is really working, and it's being exported from beyond the Western Hemisphere to the Middle East, and the repercussions that trickle on out from there. I think we're going to see a lot of good things happen.
It's either excellent planning or just dumb luck.
Yeah,
It's been great.
Certainly need to capitalize on it.
Well, we've had a good time today.
Oh yeah,
It's
been great.
free flow of information and discussion has been wonderful, and I appreciate that.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. It's always good.
It's been a long time since I've shot a lot of free throws.
That's right, me too. I haven't played it in a while.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed this session of Table Talk. Dave is very smart when it comes to history and policy, American policy. For, I believe, 8 years you were in Army intelligence?
Intelligence and infantry.
Intelligence and infantry.
Dual, and then I did another 7 in the Air Force with intelligence. So
we're very fortunate to have Dave with us today and being able to speak on a level that a lot of us are not used to.
No, happy to do it. No, it's always great to have a chance to throw ideas out and hear things and everything else.
If any of you from out there would like to speak, comment, please do. We're at Eastern North Carolina Now, ENCNow.com. Come to our site and comment. Tell us how you really feel. And thank you for joining us today. And we'll see you soon, I hope.
Have a good one.